The morning begins not with a sudden brightness, but with a slow, gray awakening. Somewhere in the heart of a late medieval town, behind timbered walls blackened by years of smoke, a small brothel stirs to life. The air outside is cool, touched by the faint sweetness of damp earth, and the far-off scent of baking bread. The sky, pale and streaked with the first color of dawn, seeps gently between crooked rooftops. Inside, the wooden shutters are still closed, though a faint thread of light slips through the cracks, glinting against the dust motes that hang lazily in the air. The soundscape is hushed but alive. A slow creak of old timbers, a faint cough from a neighboring room, the distant toll of the church bell marking the first prayer of the day. In this quiet hour, before the bustle begins, the brothel feels almost like a household. The women, most still half asleep, lie under woolen blankets rough to the touch but warm against the morning chill. Their hair, loose and tangled from the night before, spreads across straw-filled mattresses covered in faded linen. A single candle stub, long since burned out, leaves a tiny puddle of wax hardened on the table, beside a wooden bowl and a half-empty jug of watered wine. As the sun slowly rises, the faint smell of last night's tallow candles lingers in the air, a scent both heavy and familiar. Downstairs, the madam begins to stir. She is an older woman, wrapped in a plain brown gown with a thick apron tied around her waist. Her hair, once dark, is streaked with silver and hidden beneath a simple linen coif. She moves quietly through the main room, her footsteps muffled by rushes scattered across the uneven floor. The rushes, dried reeds, sprinkled with crushed herbs like lavender and sage, help cover the smell of sweat, and smoke that clings to every surface. The hearth, cold since the night before, is coaxed back to life. She kneels, places a few small sticks into the ashes, and blows gently until the first orange flicker catches. The faint crackle of fire fills the silence. It's not yet warm, but the sight of flame makes the place feel alive again. Upstairs, a girl named Anne yawns and sits up, rubbing sleep from her eyes. She is young, perhaps 19, her face pale in the morning light, with faint freckles across her nose. She pulls on a shift of white linen, worn thin at the elbows, and reaches for her kirtle, a faded blue dress she'll lace at the sides. She moves slowly, not from laziness but from the rhythm of a world that never rushes. The day will come to her whether she hurries or not. Through the half-open window, faint sounds of the town drift in: the creak of a cartwheel, the clop of hooves on cobblestones, the cry of a baker calling out his loaves. Life in the medieval town is already beginning. Vendors preparing stalls, apprentices sweeping doorsteps, and the smell of bread mixing with smoke from 100 hearths. Anne looks out at the street below. Across the way, a laundress pours gray water into the gutter, her sleeves rolled high as steam rises in the chill air. A dog trots past, tail wagging, nosing at discarded scraps from the night before. In the kitchen, the madam prepares a simple breakfast. A coarse loaf of rye bread, a wedge of hard cheese, and a pot of weak ale. There is no coffee, no tea, only ale small and mild, safer than the water that runs through the city drains. One by one, the women come down from their rooms, each wrapped in shawls, their bare feet cold against the stone. They eat in quiet, tearing bread with their hands, occasionally murmuring to one another about a dream or a customer, or a new tear in a gown that must be mended. There's little laughter in the mornings here, but also no sorrow. It's simply another day. A candle is lit on the table, its flame small and steady. One of the girls hums softly as she eats. An old tune from the countryside, the kind sung while milking cows or spinning wool. Meanwhile, in the courtyard behind the house, a boy from the nearby tavern brings a bucket of water from the well. The rope squeaks as he lowers it, the splash echoing faintly up the stone shaft. Water is precious in town, fetched daily, used sparingly. The women will use it to wash their faces, rinse their hands, and perhaps, if the weather is warm, wipe down their arms and necks with a damp cloth. A full bath is a rare thing, saved for holy days or special guests. The madam checks her ledger, a small book bound in leather, the ink faded but legible. It lists debts, payments, and expenses: candles, bread, ale, linens, rent to the city, and coin owed to the guild inspector. Brothels in the late medieval town are legal, but watched closely. They pay taxes, follow curfews, and are forbidden to operate near churches or schools. Still, the rules bend easily with coin and discretion. Outside, the day brightens. The first proper sunlight spills across the cobbles, illuminating the dust in the air like gold powder. The brothel's door remains closed. Mornings are quiet hours. This is the time for mending gowns, sweeping floors, washing linens, and tidying the rooms. Anne and another girl, Marjorie, carry armfuls of sheets to the courtyard. They shake them out in the air, the sound a soft snap of fabric. The sheets smell faintly of lavender from the rushes laid beneath them, though the scent is mixed with the earthiness of straw. They hang them across a line, the pale fabric fluttering gently in the breeze. In the background, the steady tolling of the church bell marks terse, the mid-morning prayer. Even here, in a house of sin as the priests would call it, life moves to the rhythm of the bells. Work pauses briefly. The women glance up, some crossing themselves, others simply listening. For a few quiet moments, the whole town seems to breathe in unison. Blacksmith, baker, beggar, and brothel alike. As the morning lengthens, the sun warms the tiled roof. The smell of baking bread grows stronger, carried from the bakery next door. Inside, the air softens, the light turns golden, filling the room with a sleepy warmth. The women move slower now, lulled by the sameness of it all. The brushing of hair, the sound of broom bristles against the floor, the soft creak of stairs. And so, the morning drifts on, unhurried, ordinary, full of small domestic motions. Nothing grand happens here, no great events or tragedies. Just the gentle rhythm of existence, work, rest, and the endless cycle of cleaning what will only be used again. Outside, a distant bell tolls again. The marketplace is alive now, filled with chatter and footsteps. But inside the brothel, life remains cocooned in quietness. The hush before the heat of the day begins. By the time the sun climbs high above the rooftops, the town hums with steady life. The brothel, sitting quietly near the edge of the market quarter, feels half asleep despite the brightness outside. The smell of the morning fire still lingers, wood smoke, ashes, and the faint sweetness of dried herbs that smoldered in the hearth. The shutters are open now, letting in soft squares of sunlight that fall across the wooden floor. The light catches the edges of everything: the brass jug on the table, the chipped clay cups, the grain of the rough hewn beams that hold the ceiling above. Dust drifts slowly through the air, floating in and out of the sunlight like golden snow. The women have finished their morning chores and sit resting now. Some mend their clothes by the window, their fingers moving carefully through linen and thread. Others untangle their hair, combing through it with wooden pins, smoothing it into loose braids. Conversation comes and goes in gentle waves. Talk of prices at the market, of a merchant's rumor, of a shoe that needs new leather ties. The madam sits at the long table, her hands folded, eyes half closed as she listens. Her work is quiet but constant. She keeps the place running, arranging supplies, minding the accounts, and making sure everyone is fed. From time to time, she glances toward the door, though there is no need yet. The afternoon hours are still a lull, the patrons rarely come before dusk. Outside, the sounds of town life drift in through the open shutters. The call of a peddler selling apples, the rhythmic ring of a blacksmith's hammer, the chatter of children chasing one another down the narrow lane. A dog barks, a door slams, and somewhere far away, a church bell tolls for the hour. Anne sits near the window, sewing a tear in the hem of her dress. The fabric is coarse, dyed in a faded blue that was once bright. Her needle moves slowly, carefully, and the afternoon light glimmers against the small metal point. Her thoughts wander as she works. To the countryside she came from. The river she used to cross barefoot in summer. The smell of hay and the sound of crickets at dusk. She hums a small tune she barely remembers, something her mother sang long ago. Beside her, Marjorie is brushing her hair, each stroke unhurried, rhythmic. The room is filled with small, soft sounds. The scrape of the brush, the whisper of fabric, the occasional crack from the hearth. It is a stillness that feels both peaceful and heavy. The kind of stillness that only comes when time itself seems to stretch and slow. The madam rises and moves toward the kitchen corner. She stirs the small pot that sits near the fire. A thin stew made of onions, cabbage, and barley. The smell is humble but comforting, earthy and warm. There is bread again, coarse and dense, to be dipped into the broth. A small wheel of cheese sits nearby, wrapped in cloth. This is the kind of food that keeps people alive rather than delighted, but no one complains. Hunger in this time is never too far away. A warm meal, however plain, is enough. As the women eat, sunlight shifts across the room. The day outside grows hotter, and the air inside grows thick and still. Flies hum lazily near the window. The rushes on the floor release a faint scent when stepped on: rosemary, mint, and meadowsweet. Their fragrance was once fresh, but now, after days of trampling, it mingles with the smells of tallow, and sweat. In the courtyard behind the house, a small wooden tub sits half filled with water from the morning's well run. One of the women kneels beside it, washing a few linen cloths by hand. She dips them, rubs them against a rough stone, and wrings them out until her fingers ache. The sound of water splashing echoes softly between the walls. Above, pigeons coo from the roof beams, their feathers ruffling in the warm air. Meanwhile, the town outside continues its own rhythm. The market is full now. Traders shouting, carts creaking, the clatter of pots and buckets. From the Brothel's upstairs window, the women can see the edge of the square, where bakers sell loaves darkened by the fire, and the fishmonger sprinkles water over his catch to keep it from spoiling. The smell of salt and yeast drifts faintly on the breeze. Inside, the hours move gently. Time is not marked by clocks here but by the bells of the church. When sext rings, the bell for midday prayer, its deep sound rolls across the rooftops. For a moment, conversation fades. Even here, in a house not favored by the priests, the women bow their heads in quiet respect. The sound of the bell is a reminder of order, of rhythm, of the shared heartbeat of the town. After the bell fades, the madam sends the youngest girl, a thin and cheerful thing named Bess, to fetch a jug of ale from the tavern down the lane. She wraps her shawl around her shoulders, coins tied in a cloth purse at her belt, and steps out into the bright day. The sun dazzles her eyes for a moment. The street is narrow and uneven, paved with cobbles slick from the morning's water. She walks carefully, nodding to familiar faces. The baker's wife sweeping her step, the cooper rolling a barrel toward his shop. Inside the tavern, it is dim and cool. The keeper, a stout man with flour on his sleeves, greets her with a nod and fills her jug from a cask. The ale is light, meant for drinking all day without much effect. She thanks him and makes her way back, balancing the jug carefully, its surface beaded with condensation. Back at the brothel, the women pour the ale into wooden cups. They sip slowly, talking in low voices. Someone tells a small joke, something harmless, about a cobbler and a goose, and soft laughter ripples through the room. For a while, the heaviness of the day lifts, replaced by that quiet companionship that comes from shared routine. As the sun begins to tilt westward, shadows lengthen across the room. The light grows softer, golden at first, then deepening into amber. It catches in their hair, in the folds of linen, in the ripples of ale within the cups. The air feels slower now, as though the world itself is preparing to rest. The madam checks the shelves, making sure there is enough candle wax, enough clean sheets, enough wood for the fire. These are her worries, small but constant. She takes a moment to look out the window. The sky beyond the rooftops is beginning to pale toward evening, the color of old parchment touched with rose. Soon the time for quiet will end. The brothel will open its doors once again, and laughter will replace the stillness. But for now, in this gentle hour between day and dusk, the world feels almost peaceful. The women sit by the window, watching the last of the sunlight slide across the rooftops. Somewhere in the distance, a bell tolls again. Vespers, the evening prayer. Its sound is low and soothing, rolling through the air like a long sigh. Inside, the brothel is still. The fire burns low, the stew pot empty, the smell of herbs and all mingling softly in the fading light. The world outside grows quieter too, the market emptying, doors closing, and the streets filling with the hum of twilight. The women rise slowly, stretching their arms, smoothing their gowns. The day's quiet work is done. Soon, another rhythm will begin. Evening in the medieval town arrives not suddenly, but in a slow unfurling. Like a blanket of dimming light spreading over rooftops and courtyards, softening every corner of the day. The sun lowers behind the church spire, and the bells mark vespers once more, their notes mellow and slow, rolling across the rooftop tops like ripples over still water. Inside the brothel, the glow from the hearth deepens into a warm orange, throwing shifting shadows along the wooden walls. The air has grown cooler, the scent of the outside, wood smoke, damp earth, and roasted grains, drifts gently through the open shutters. In the street below, townsfolk make their way home from the market, their voices soft with weariness. Wheels creak, dogs bark faintly, and the sound of a lute being tuned drifts from a nearby tavern. Anne, now dressed in her evening gown of deep burgundy wool, stands before a small mirror of polished tin, smoothing her hair. The gown laces up the front, the ties of rough cord drawn tight. Over it she wears a narrow belt with a tiny purse, inside which she keeps a few coins and a dried sprig of lavender. The scent of it comforts her. A small thing that smells of cleaner, simpler days. Across the room, Marjorie adjusts the candles in their holders. The candles are made of tallow, rendered animal fat. And though they give a steady light, they smoke and sputter, filling the room with a faint, greasy scent. When lit, they cast a pale, buttery glow that softens every face and corner. The madam always insists the candles be trimmed to half length before evening. The lower flame makes the rooms look warmer, gentler, and less worn. The women move quietly about, preparing both themselves and the rooms. Some change their gowns, pinning their hair, washing their faces in cool water poured from a jug. Others sweep the rushes once more, scattering fresh herbs, mint, sage, and a touch of rose petals when they can be afforded. The floor rustles softly beneath their steps. In the kitchen, the madame tends to her evening tasks. She checks the wine jugs, measures the ale, and sets out a few small plates. Nothing fancy, just bread, cheese and salted nuts to serve if a guest asks. She moves with practiced calm, her eyes sharp even in dim light. For her, the Brothel's rhythm is like breathing, predictable, unhurried, but always alive. Outside, the street takes on a different kind of hum. Lanterns are being lit one by one, their glow flickering against the damp stone walls. The tavern door opens, spilling out laughter and the faint strains of a fiddle tune. Men in rough cloaks pass by in groups of 2 or 3, their boots scraping on cobblestones, their voices low and thick with drink. The madam glances toward the door, then at the women gathered in the main room. "Time now," she says simply, her tone even. Neither stern nor kind, merely part of the daily ritual. The women nod and move to their places. Some by the window, others by the long table. One near the stairs leading up to the small private rooms. Anne sits near the fire, her hands folded in her lap. The light paints her face in gold and shadow. She does not speak much, only listens. To the faint laughter outside, to the creak of the house, to the sound of a cat padding softly along the floorboards. The door opens and the cool evening air slips in. The first visitor steps inside. A merchant, by his clothes, his cloak smells of wool and road dust. He nods politely to the madam, exchanges a few quiet words, and is shown to a seat by the hearth. There is no rush, no loud greeting, only the quiet murmur of ordinary business. The women continue their small tasks as if nothing has changed, pouring ale, mending a sleeve, adjusting a candlewick. The room feels alive now, though still calm. The sound of low voices blends with the crackle of fire, and the smell of warm wax and ale fills the air. From the street outside comes the distant melody of a minstrel's song. A gentle tune played on a lute, weaving its way through the twilight. Meanwhile, upstairs, one of the small rooms stands ready. The bed, a simple wooden frame filled with straw, has been freshly turned, and covered with linen that smells faintly of soaproot and lavender. A small candle burns on the table beside it, its flame steady and soft. The window is open just a little, letting in the cool air of dusk. Somewhere beyond, a night bird calls once, then falls silent. As more visitors arrive, the rhythm of the house settles into its nightly pulse. Quiet footsteps on stairs, The whisper of voices behind closed doors, the gentle clinking of cups. Yet even in this, there is no haste, no sharpness. The world here moves slowly, as if lulled by its own repetition. The madam, seated once more at her table, writes a few lines in her ledger by candlelight. The quill scratches softly over the parchment. She pauses from time to time to listen. Not for anything unusual, but for the comfort of familiarity. Every sound has its place: the low hum of talk, the creak of a bed frame, the sigh of a door closing. Outside, the evening deepens into true night. The streets grow quieter, only the tavern remains noisy, its laughter spilling into the darkness. The sky, once gold and rose, turns a soft, deep blue. Lanterns sway in the faint breeze, their flames trembling like stars caught in glass. Anne finishes her cup of ale and sets it aside. She leans back, eyes half closed, listening to the fire. Her hands are folded in her lap, fingers still, the faintest smile at the corner of her mouth. There is peace in her stillness. Not joy exactly, but the kind of calm that comes from accepting the rhythm of the days. At the far end of the room, Marjorie hums quietly, as she folds a length of cloth. It is the same song she hummed in the morning, though slower now, softer, almost a lullaby. The others listen without realizing they are listening. The tune fills the spaces between the sounds. The whisper of fire, the quiet murmur of voices, the faint crack of a chair leg. The hours pass gently. Candles burn low, wax dripping down their sides in slow, pale rivers. The fire fades to glowing coals. The laughter outside quiets, replaced by the chirp of night insects, and the distant toll of the last bell. Compline, the prayer of nightfall. The madam closes her ledger, blows out the candle, and sits for a moment in the near darkness. The room smells of smoke and warm wax, of worn linen and herbs long faded. She listens. The house breathing softly, the town beyond it settling into sleep. And though the night's business is not yet over, there is a peace in this hour. A stillness that feels like the pause between heartbeats. Would you like me to continue with part 40? Night in the medieval brothels approx. 4,000 words. Where the narration grows even slower and softer, leading gently toward the final calm of sleep. Ending with everyone drifting off beneath the faint candlelight. Night has fully arrived now, wrapping the medieval town in its heavy, velvety dark. The streets are almost silent. Only the faintest sounds linger. The splash of a bucket emptied into a gutter, the muffled bark of a distant dog, the echo of boots fading down a narrow lane. The air has cooled, carrying with it the scent of damp stone, hearth smoke, and the faint sweetness of hay from the stables. Inside the brothel, the air glows with the last light of candles. The flame trembles in its pool of wax, steady but soft, casting a golden haze across the room. The wooden beams seem to breathe with the light, shadows swelling, then receding again in the flicker. The madam moves quietly through the house, checking that everything is as it should be. She pauses at each door, listening briefly. Her steps are slow, the floorboards creaking softly beneath her weight. The night feels long, but familiar, its stillness comforting, like an old friend who visits at the same hour every day. Upstairs, Anne sits by the window. The shutters are half open, letting in a faint silver light from the moon. Her hair glows pale in the cool glow, and she sits very still, gazing at the rooftops below. From here, she can see the distant spire of the church, its cross faintly outlined against the sky. The bell has long since fallen silent. Only the night remains, vast, quiet, and endless. She takes a slow breath. The air smells of wax and rushes, of the faint herbs scattered on the floor. A moth flutters near the candle beside her, its wings trembling in the light before it settles again in shadow. Anne watches it for a long moment, her thoughts drifting in no particular direction. Downstairs, the last of the guests finishes his ale, thanks the madam with a polite nod, and steps out into the dark street. The door closes softly behind him. For the first time that day, the brothel is truly still. Marjorie is tidying what remains, stacking cups, wiping the table, trimming what's left of the candle wicks. Her movements are quiet and unhurried. The faint scrape of wood against wood, the rustle of her skirt, these are the only sounds. She hums under her breath again. That same low tune that seems to belong to no one and everyone, part lullaby, part memory. When she's done, she folds her hands and stands for a moment by the fire. Only a few glowing embers remain, their light pulsing faintly. She takes the iron poker and gently stirs them, until they collapse into a soft red bed. Then she adds a single small log, not for warmth now, but to keep the room breathing a little longer. In her small chamber, the madam removes her coif and sets it aside. Her gray hair falls loose over her shoulders. She sits on the edge of her bed, rubbing her hands slowly, the skin rough from years of work. She says a small prayer. Not aloud, not to be heard, but in the silence of her own heart. For safety, for peace, for another day's quiet survival. Then she lies down, pulling the wool blanket over her shoulders. The house settles into itself. The beams creak softly as they cool. The rushes on the floor rustle faintly with the movement of air. Somewhere, a cat curls up by the hearth, its fur catching the last glow from the embers. The faint ticking sound of cooling wood becomes a kind of rhythm, gentle and steady, like a heartbeat in the stillness. Upstairs, Anne finally leaves the window. She blows out her candle, and the room folds into shadow. Only the moonlight remains now, silver and silent, touching the edges of her bed and the folds of her gown. She lies down, her hair fanning across the linen pillow, her eyes half closed. Outside, the sound of night fills the air. A soft wind brushing through the eaves. The far-off croak of a frog near the river. The murmur of leaves against the walls. The night feels endless, but not lonely. It is the kind of quiet that holds warmth. A reminder that the world, even in its roughest corners, has moments of peace. Meanwhile, beyond the Brothel's small courtyard, the town sleeps. The bakers will rise again before dawn, kneading their dough in silence. The blacksmith will stoke his fire when the morning bell rings. The washerwomen will gather at the well, their laughter echoing faintly across the cobbles. Life, steady and unchanging, will begin again just as it always has. But for now, in this small corner of the town, all is still. The candlelight fades, the embers dim, and the brothel, once full of footsteps, laughter, and murmured voices, becomes a place of rest. The moon drifts higher, pale and soft through the thin clouds. Its light touches the window panes, turning them to faint silver. Inside, the women sleep. Their breaths even, their faces peaceful. The madam, in her small room, dreams of her younger days when she was still a seamstress, stitching gowns for noblewomen who would never know her name. Anne dreams of fields, of the sound of wind moving through long grass. Marjorie dreams of nothing at all. Just the comfort of warmth and the weight of the blanket around her. Outside, the last tavern closes. A lone cart rattles by, its wheels echoing faintly before fading into distance. The town exhales, and silence settles deeper still. In the calm of that hour, when night is at its darkest and the world seems to sleep within itself, even the air feels slow. The moonlight softens the edges of everything. The Brothel, the street, the stones themselves all seem to breathe together, as if resting in the same slow dream. And then, at last, the first faint sound of dawn touches the distance. Not light yet, but the promise of it. A cock's crow far away, a faint shifting of wind. The long night begins to loosen its hold. Inside no one stirs yet. The house remains quiet, wrapped in the last deep hour of rest before morning returns. The candles are cold. The air still carries the faint scent of smoke, and every room feels like it's floating gently between sleep and waking. For a few precious moments, time itself seems to pause. No past, no future, only the hush of now. And so the night in the medieval brothel drifts to its end, softly, quietly, peacefully. Another day will come, just as this one did, with the smell of bread, the toll of bells, and the slow, unbroken rhythm of life. But for now, beneath the faint glow of moonlight, and the soft sigh of wind against the shutters, the brothel sleeps. And the town sleeps. And the medieval world, for one gentle hour knows only peace.